Hi guys, this is Cassie Eichhoff, and I decided to do my curriculum over time on data. Data is huge. It's a really important part of what we do as teachers now, and I just wanted to know where it came from. So why I chose data, again, I wanted to know why we're using it, where it came from. Obviously, take a look at what we're seeing now in the present, and then maybe compare that to what we can predict as far as future implications. And I chose this particular picture to start off because, as we can see, data reaches everywhere for us as teachers. We're collecting data all the time. Our districts are collecting data all the time. So I really wanted to take a deeper look into this. So my curriculum practice over time questions that really have been driving me here is what prompted data-based instruction to become best practice? And what do we know about data now? What is this data actually telling us? So my research hypothesis or prediction is that data has been used because it's the most obvious solution to closing the achievement gap. So that's kind of where I started, and I guess kind of what I wanted an answer to. My research, my sources, what I used were educational journals, newspaper articles, and an interview, mostly educational journals. I think I used one newspaper article. But yeah, so we'll go forward there. So my biggest question again was, what is data and how did it become best practice? And the simplest answer is always the best. Data is a collection of student academic information. We are going crazy collecting student academic information. And then I have something else called DDDM, and that is data-driven decision-making, and that is the mantra of educators from the central office to the school to the classroom. And as we know as teachers, data is driving everything we do, the way we teach, the way that we even create more data. And then I kind of, after looking at all the research, gave my own answer to how it became best practice, simply because it gave us numbers. It gave us something to compare to something we did yesterday. So it gave us that practice, it gave us big data, and it really gave us an educational GPS. It gave us a way to track students and compare them to other students. Also, if you hear any weird noises, that's my 18-month-old. He's feeding himself mac and cheese right now because I'm Mother of the Year. So the start of data-driven instruction, I call this slide Back to the Future or Rose by any other name because I find that this is very cyclical. In the 1970s, this is where it really started. That was the first time that states were really mandating that schools start taking data for school improvement. This was some pretty simple stuff, as we'll get into a little later. In the 1980s, public school strategic planning. So again, another name for school improvement and planning. And that process was pretty solid and fundamental through the 1980s and 90s. And then in 2000, 2001, we get into big data with No Child Left Behind, state testing, and teaching accountability. And then currently, we are data overload right now. We've got this DDDM, or this data-driven decision-making, and that is basically for improvement goals, progress for teachers, progress for students, and comparisons. So the goals of data-driven instruction are supposed to be clear and measurable because they're numbers. We can literally take them and say, here's where you were today, here's where you were yesterday. So it's supposed to help the success of students in schools, provide that framework for tracking progress and accountability for students and teachers. And then it's, in a way, supposed to validate your viable curriculum practices and validate your test scores. And then also, again, that little locational GPS for the students, it's going to compare the students to what is supposed to be the normal numbers for people that are of their age and supposed skill set. What data looked like from 1970 to 1990 was generally pretty toned down compared to what we know today and what we're asked to do today and what our districts are doing today. The five main things that schools would take data on are the five things that you see here. Race, so the breakdown of race in their school buildings, the gender, the breakdown of gender, the graduation rate. We still hear a ton about race and graduation rate. Also, they did teacher to student ratio because obviously that's important statistic to have as well. You don't want too many kids and not enough teachers. And then also the age breakdown of the students they were serving and the teachers as well that they had employed. So those were really the 5 big things. There were some other things, school district to school district, that I found, but these were the 5 things that were definitely in that mandated data collection premise. So what data looks like right now, I actually took this from the nebraska.gov page. And as we can see, this is what we are dealing with here in the state of Nebraska as far as taking data. We are, again, buried in data, and our district is buried in data. I mean, there are a ton of things listed right here that we have to take data on. Some of it's ours to do, some of it's the district's to do, and even within each of those things, there might be 4 or 5 different facets of data to collect. So as you can see, data has really evolved and expanded insofar as what we're collecting and when. I also talked to an administrator who's been an administrator for 30 years. And some of the things that I asked him about education and data is, number one, why he thought we had it. What were the goals? What are the changes that he had seen in his 30 years as an administrator, and then the future? And he literally thought, we didn't have anything else that was dependable. He thought the premise was to make schools more accountable because people were blaming schools because compared to foreign countries, we're falling behind. Changes, he said the big changes were when we got big data, we were testing so much, and we've been testing all the time. Again, that's my son. He's banging his spoon right now. And then when we are trying to raise these test scores, we collect more and more and more data to prove to these critics, look at what we're doing, look at what we're trying. And then he said, in the future, until we have something that satisfies the critics at the state and national levels more than numbers, he said, we'll keep using data because that's really the best that we have as far as giving ironclad answers. Because he said, I'm not saying it's right, I'm saying it's a fact. I tend to agree with that. My discoveries, I learned that data-driven decision-making has been around longer than I thought. It's cyclical in nature. It's got different names, but it keeps coming back. Data-driven decision-making does not represent the whole of the picture of education. Sometimes it works to meet the needs of our learners, sometimes it doesn't. And colleges are actually using this type of data to help them find students, which actually makes a lot of sense when you put those pieces together, but that would be a presentation for another day. And then basically the big picture here is that the jump to using data to inform school improvement and instruction started in the 1970s. The goals remain pretty constant, although the data collection practices have evolved. And then again, it's been around for 50 years. It doesn't show any signs of discontinuation. Honey, it's okay. And research shows us the data is a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole puzzle. What's next for data? I would say, Lincoln, I would say continuation and more of the same, because until there's another best practice option that allows us to compare progress, data collection is here to stay. And those are my references. Thank you all for listening. I hope you had as much fun making this as I did.